Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with another top list video. This one is one to help you guys out, specifically, yes indeed, top 5 tips to help improve your micro. So let's get straight to it. Number 5 is going to be learn, and then learn some more. Warhammer, Total War Warhammer, that is a very complex game. There's a lot of factions now, multitude of different matchups, and so playing multiplayer can seem a bit daunting at first. Now, you know, you should definitely respect it, but at the same time, don't let that scare you away, certainly. You just want to try and learn as much as possible, and, I mean, that's an ongoing process, certainly, throughout your time playing the game. Even myself, I still learn new synergies and other things all the time. I learn that units have abilities I didn't think they did, or might have better stats than I thought perhaps they did. So it's always useful to continue learning, and you forget things, and so it's useful to relearn them. And anyway, this is an ongoing process, but in general, why you want to learn specifically to help improve your micro is that you need to make snap decisions in battle, and these decisions need to sometimes be made extremely quickly and with very little to no information at hand. So you need to know what units do what to expect out of performance of certain units in certain matchups, and a lot of that comes from learning not only the factions that you plan on playing, but all of the factions, because you're going to come up against pretty much all the factions in multiplayer. So I have just published my overview of the Empire. I've also got an overview of Norska. Going to be putting out overviews of all the other factions, where I just go through the roster so that, whatever faction you're planning on playing, even if you're not planning on buying another faction, or, maybe buying the Lord DLCs for it or whatever, I'm going to go through the full roster so you can see what everything does. That way you have a reference guide to go back to if you ever, have a battle where you're not sure what a unit did or what abilities it has. You can go watch those videos. Yeah, so in general, just keep learning, keep improving your knowledge about the game, your knowledge about various matchups, synergies, and so on, and that will help inform your decisions in battle so that you can make them faster and make the right decisions, because it can be hard sometimes to know what is the right decision in the heat of battle. And that sort of plays nicely into my second point, which we're going to back out of this custom battle screen just momentarily here and go over to my replay folder. Yes, indeed, you need to watch yourself, and what I mean by that is watch your own replays, especially the losses. I mean, obviously, sometimes you're going to run into some crazy cheese build on ladder that, there's not a lot you can do, or, it may even be worth watching so that if you do happen to run into that player again, you can build a counter cheese build. But anyway, watching yourself and watching others as well, especially like high-level tournament players. I know I learn a lot just by casting tournaments, even if I'm not participating in them, just watching and casting how these players play. It helps my own micro improve, and I see different strategies and tactics, and so yeah, beyond watching your own replays, especially the losses, I would definitely recommend that you watch, tournaments. My channel's obviously a great place to start. I've got a few guide series as well to help improve your knowledge, and tons of battle replays for you to watch of myself and various other players. Of course, Turin is a great one to watch, Gabo King, Jonton, although Jonton seems to be taking a little bit of a break now. There's a lot of games in his backlog that I would highly recommend you watch. There's plenty of other multiplayer YouTubers as well, Janet on occasion, others. So keep your eyes out, watch as much as you can, and yeah, watch your own replays as well, of course. And now we're going to go back to the custom battle screen as I go to the third tip here, which is going to be use number groups. So we're going to go ahead and use knowledge to just briefly build an army here. I'm going to be going up against Chaos, and we're going to go into the battle, and I'm going to show you what I mean by using number groups. And this is probably one of the most important tips on this list. Even though it ended up number 3 on the list, I do think that this is probably one of the most important, is that you use your number groups effectively. And not only your number groups, but hotkeys in general. you know, hotkeys for skirmish mode, for melee mode, various other things that you can do to not have to click as many buttons, because you want your mouse to be, you know, issuing attack orders and so on, and freeing up, you know, your mouse to do those sorts of things is very, very important. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and build a build here real quick. We'll grab some Faith Demis, we'll grab another group of Faith Demis just with a Warrior Priest here. And if you're wondering what I mean by Faith Demis, go ahead and watch my overview of the Empire. Definitely recommend that if you're curious about the Empire, or if you're curious about fighting the Empire. I do go over quite a few things there. We're going to need some armor-piercing missiles of some kind, so let's grab some Outriders. A couple of them. Reichsguard are always a good pick, so we'll grab a couple of them as well. And my infantry line is feeling a little thin, so let's grab some swordsmen and the Sigmar's Sons. Yep, that looks pretty good. So now we'll go ahead and move into the battle. And I'll show you what I mean by using number groups. And the important thing here is to establish consistency. You don't necessarily have to always use the number group system like how I have them here. I would, in fact, recommend you develop your own system that feels comfortable for you and for your hardware setup. And a note about hardware, I actually use an MMO gaming mouse that has 12 buttons on the side that are programmable. These are currently assigned to the number groups, so it allows me to use up to 9 number groups effectively, just because, you know, going all the way over to the number 9 on your actual keyboard in the heat of battle can sometimes be a little bit tough. So anyway, definitely recommend, if you guys have the ability to, that you may look into some hardware. MMO gaming mouses in particular with numbers are quite useful for controlling mass number groups. But anyway, for my own number grouping system, just as an example, number 1 is always going to be my lord, whoever that is. This time I'm going to include the Royal Alt of Gryphites as well, because they're going to be running with him specifically. The downside of this is I can't just hit 1 to use his abilities quickly, like I will with the Jade Wizard. We're going to put him on group number 3. That's where I pretty much always put my caster if it's not my lord. Or if my lord is my caster, then I'll put either a high-value hero or monster, some kind of single entity on group number 3. If I don't have any of the above, then I will put my skirmish line on group number 3. But typically, number 3 would be my caster. Number 2 is going to be the infantry line, and for this one, I'm going to control group. So if you press Control G, it will in fact lock the group's formation. And a quick note about deployment and formations as well. This isn't one of my things on the list specifically, but just in general, it's a good idea to stagger your formations a little bit. That way it gives you a little bit more time to react to various different you know, situations or things you might run into. Just a little bit of spacing. It also physically occupies more space on the map. But anyway, so we're going to do infantry number 2. The second group of Faith Demis is going to go on number 4. And then we're going to put this group of Reichsguard over on this side, number 5. This group of Reichsguard, number 6. We're going to put them up in Vanguard. And then the Outriders will be number 7. So this sort of convention of number 1, the Lord, 2, infantry line, 3, caster, other high value, 4 through 6 is all mobility, and 7 is typically skirmish cav. I will use this numbering convention with obvious modifications depending on the build in pretty much every matchup and with every faction. And I recommend you guys, again, you don't have to use this specific convention or this specific combination, but I recommend whatever you do, figure out what works for you and just continue to do it the same way every time. Establish some kind of consistency, because the biggest thing with using these number groups is you want to develop muscle memory. You want to be able to not have to think about what's on what number, just be able to quickly snap to it, you know, immediately issue some orders or whatever you need to do. So that's why I recommend you guys establish some consistency using these number groups. Just try and do it the same way every time if you can. It'll definitely help improve your micro big time. And now we're going to move on to tip number 2, and if we go ahead and start up this battle against the AI, obviously you don't have the luxury of pausing within an actual battle, but I'm going to do so here just for the sake of explaining here. So in the initial phases of the battle, let's say the first few seconds, you're immediately going to want to check out your opponent's army. You know, mouse over various things. Like at a glance, these could be Chaos Warriors, they could be Chosen, they could be Marauders, could be a mix of all of them. So you want to mouse over and see what your opponent has very briefly. So we know, okay, there are some Chosen here, there are some Marauders as well. Most of the Marauders seem to be concentrated over on this side. There's the Mirror Guard and the Chosen over on this side. We've also got some important monsters to deal with, the Summoners of Rage, we've got the Weird Spawn, the Big Bird, and some mobility to deal with as well. This initial phase of the battle is also a good time to quickly check the minimap, check the corners of the map behind you, see if there's any crazy Vanguard shenanigans, and you know, you'll want to do some scouting as well. And just more in terms of scouting, once the battle actually begins, you'll want to also, if you can, again, you don't always have time to do all of this before the battle starts, especially if your opponent goes very aggressively into Vanguard. You want to check the spell loadout they have and see, you know, potentially what spells you're going to be facing. And the next thing to do is to do some scouting. So now I know that AI doesn't actually have any units hidden here, but I'm going to push these Zintler's Reichsguard up through this forest to do some actual physical scouting in terms of the battle to see if I can spot any hidden units here. And then you can see I'm using the number groups to start to issue orders to my other troops here. So we can go ahead and start moving here. You can, you know, drag and group as well, of course. Use kind of ad hoc groups, and changing your groups within the battle is always something that you should do. Like maybe I'm gonna go ahead and split these guys, you know, way out here for some weird reason, not that I actually would, and I'm gonna put the Reichsguard with them, so maybe I would just want to go ahead and, you know, kind of form a bit of a Kampfgruppen, if you will, for those of you who are studying World War II history. But yeah, you can see I've pushed my Zintler's Reichsguard up through the forest. I can see there's nothing in here, and that's part of scouting. And now, the final tip, if we go ahead and put it into slow motion one more time, is prioritization. Now, this means that, and this is kind of something, again, that relates to scouting. In that initial phase of the battle, you need to kind of develop a battle plan of, okay, not only what units do I need to prioritize taking down from my opponent, you know, for this Chaos build, for example, obviously the Lord is pretty much always going to be a priority target, not only because they're usually a very powerful unit, but because if you take them down, it'll cause major leadership issues for your opponent. We can also see here the Summoners of Rage are a very powerful unit, so they should be a priority. The Weird Spawn, same thing there. The Chosen may not necessarily be priorities in terms of taking them down, because we may want to save them until later, or just try and avoid them altogether because they're relatively slow. But again, you want to try and develop a battle plan of what you need to prioritize for your opponent. But you also need to think about and consider what you want to prioritize for your own army. You know, what are the units that you're going to need to spend your time putting your most aggressive micro into. Like for my build, for example, these Roy Althorf Griffites are the most important piece for taking down monsters, along with the other group of Faith Demis, so they're going to be my #1 priority for micro. My #2 priority is actually going to be the Outriders, because they're one of my only tools for effectively taking down elite halberd infantry. Their armor-piercing missiles will be very good versus Chosen with halberds, you know, Chaos Warriors with halberds, that sort of thing. So I need to make sure I keep them alive in order to, you know, ensure that. Obviously, with my opponent's build here, there aren't any elite halberds to deal with. There are still these Chosen with shields, though, so I'm gonna want to keep my Outriders alive just as long as possible. I mean, obviously you want to use their ammo, but just saying, I mean, for example, they're a cheaper unit than the Reichsguard here, but personally I would give them a little bit higher priority, not only because the Reichsguard are much tankier, but because these guys, being my only ranged component, are a very important piece of the army in and of themselves. So hopefully this made a little bit of sense to you guys, and hopefully it'll help improve your micro here. We don't need to go ahead and actually play out this battle against the AI, but yeah, that's my top 5 tips for helping to improve your micro. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and feel free to share your own tips down in the comments below. You know, we all learn together and get better together as a community, and I have to say I've noticed a lot more good players and players who are learning the game and playing more effectively, which is always awesome to see. You know, there's a lot of older players coming back to the game too, so yeah, it seems like a bit of a golden age, and we'll see what the future brings. But for now, hopefully this video was informative and helpful for you guys. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. I've got a whole playlist of guide content, so for those of you trying to learn, go ahead and check that out, and we'll see you on the next one.